All right, everybody. Good morning. Happy either Thursday or Friday. Hope you guys are having a great week. Um, we're going to start with our second topic. We're going to look at China and Japan relationships in this age of exploration. But the one thing we're going to do first, I want to do a quick recap of our notes from last time just to make sure that everybody's got it. Some of those key ideas, particularly as we go into, that's a little bit faster, you know. So first, we've got our three G's, right? God, glory, and gold. So God, I want to go convert people to my religion. Okay, that's the reason I'm exploring. Or that's the reason I'm saying I'm exploring so that the church will fund my exploration. Glory, that's an easy one. All right, I'm going to make all this money. I'm going to conquer all these people. I'm going to explore and find all this land. I'm going to be famous. Simple enough. And then gold. Twofold. First off, right? Yes, maybe they were going to just find actual gold. The second part is they were going to make money, which would help them accumulate gold. All right, best example I can give you. And I know this is a crappy picture here, but this is an Iron Maiden custom Nike. And if you had to guess how much it costs, you might throw out some numbers, but what if I told you these shoes in itself cost over $30,000? Why? Right? It's what the creation of the value of the product is. Um, so that's why when these explorers would go and find stuff everybody wanted, they could charge much higher prices. Okay, and the reason this shoe's so expensive is some Saudi prince spent a ton of money to buy up all of them, but this one remaining set. So it's supply and demand. They could get these valuable spices. They could get these valuable, whatever it was, and that helped helped them to raise the prices, made them more money. Okay, different technologies, right? We had the Caravel, which had the lateen sail, which is that triangular shaped sail, and we had the sextant, which helped them with navigation. We had the rivalry between Spain and Portugal. Right, Portugal was originally first. They had Prince Henry the Navigator. He started his sailing school. They had Vasco da Gama, who was able to find a route all the way around Africa, which got him to India. And then Spain had Columbus, who, explores the New World, 1492. Columbus sails the ocean blue, and he kind of comes into that as well. All right. Because of that rivalry, the Pope stepped in. He made Spain and Portugal sign the Treaty of Tordesillas. What was that? It just divided the eastern and western hemispheres. Anything west of the line belonged to Spain. Anything east of the line belonged to Portugal. All right, so let's get into China and Japan's reactions. That was just a review for you, but in this age of exploration. Our question we're going to answer at the end: how did China and Japan react to European explorers, traders, and why? All right, so what are we going to learn? The Ming and Qing dynasties. Now, it's that weird kind of Q, but the Qing dynasties. The voyages of Zheng He, Ming relation with foreign countries, and contact with Japan. Oop. All right. So, the age of exploration. East Asia was a hot spot for luxury goods. Okay? And many Europeans were looking to trade with China and Japan. They had all these spices, they had the teas, they had all sorts of things that were hot commodities. They had the silk. Okay, you can kind of see on the blue there, that's the Silk Road. They also had the trade routes in the red. Okay, so going back here just a bit, we had the Chinese people rebelled. They drove out the Mongol rulers, which were part of the Yuan dynasty, and they established the Ming dynasty. So 1368 to 1644. The Ming government had ruled for 200 plus years. It was weakening, as in later the Manchus, which people from Manchuria, invaded China. They established that Qing dynasty, which ruled for 260 years. So if you look at like world history, you don't see these long-standing dynasties, but both of these were very successful. All right, so Emperor Hong Wu and his son Yongglo, they were curious about the outside world and they launched voyages of exploration. Okay, this is from the Ming Dynasty. We also had Chinese Admiral Zheng He, who led 7 different voyages strictly for the purpose of showcasing China's might and power. Like, hey, you may not want to mess with us. Look at all this stuff we got. These voyages went from Southeast Asia to Eastern Africa. You took anywhere from 40 to 300 ships um, on each voyage, and some ships were up to 400 feet long. Think about a football field, 300 feet. So, in this day especially, pretty big ships. This should give you an example of the size of these ships. This would be like a modern day caravel, or well, present day caravel from like that time versus one of Zheng He's ships. All right, so who did he take with him on these trips? He had sailors, of course, soldiers, carpenters, interpreters, accountants, doctors, religious leaders, basically anybody he thought he might need, he brought with him. Because he never knew what problems he was going to run into. Remember, they were exploring. They don't know exactly what they're going to find. After his 7th voyage, Zheng He died. China decides, you know what, we're good. We've showed off our power. They withdrew into isolation and they destroyed the fleet. Just a map here for you of Zheng He's voyages. All right, so China's trade policies in the 1500s, they really reflected isolationism. What that means, they didn't need the European traders, right? They were very self-sufficient. They could grow and produce everything they needed within their own country. So if these European states wanted to come in and trade with them, they had to follow Chinese rules. We think about the Ming Dynasty, how long it was in power. There was true kind of peace and prosperity there, and they didn't want Europeans and outsiders coming in to threaten that way of life that they were living. There we go. So the rules. Okay, only the government was allowed to conduct foreign trade. There was no private businesses that were doing, private trades. It was only the government. Trading was only allowed at certain ports. Um, if you wanted to trade with China, you had to pay tribute to the Ming leaders. And tribute is what we call a peace tax. And what that means is, hey, here's a little bit of money so that you can know we're serious about wanting to trade with you. Plus, you pay a little extra money. Maybe they trade with you a little bit more. It's really just good old fashioned bribery at its finest, labeled as a peace tax. Another thing they had to do was a kowtow. And that was a ritual which involved kneeling in front of the emperor, touching your forehead to the ground 9 times. The Dutch accepted these restrictions, and they were one of the most successful with trading with China. That's just someone performing the kowtow, placing his forehead to the ground 9 times, just as a sign of respect. All right, so Japan. In 1467, there was civil wars that kind of shattered Japan's feudal system. Okay, the country becomes chaotic. A feudal system is simply when like there's a landowner and he's wealthy and he has a bunch of serfs on his land and they work the land and they're allowed to live there in exchange for living there and protection. Um, they would work for this landowner. We also had some warrior chieftains called Daimyos. They became lords in a new Japanese feudalistic system. This is just kind of an outline for us of what Japan looked like. At the top, we had the emperor, who was really just a figurehead. Then we had the shogun. Those are your political leaders. Think of them as like your senators. From there, we had the Diamos and the Samurai and the Ronin. They were all part of this warrior class. About 90% of the population was peasants. Below them, we had artisans and merchants. Those were your crafts and salespeople. All right, so Europe begins coming into Japan in the 16th century. At first, they were welcomed. Within 100 years, the Europeans were pretty aggressive and they kind of wore out their welcome. So the Portuguese brought clocks, eyeglasses, tobacco, firearms, and by 1600, all of these European missionaries, they were there for the first G, God, had converted about 300,000 Japanese to Christianity. There was a peasant rebellion. Most of them were Christian. After that happened, the shoguns persecuted Christians, and it led to the formation of an exclusion policy, which basically just means, no, we're done. We don't want anybody else coming in. So they sealed the country's borders. They excluded merchants and missionaries. There was the port of Nagasaki. That was the only port that stayed open. Only to the Dutch. Remember, the Dutch were willing to follow all the rules and show a ton of respect. And the Chinese traders. Chinese had a very similar way of life as far as respectfulness goes. Remember, we talked about Confucianism versus Buddhism, but similar-ish religious lifestyles as well. That lasted for more than 200 years. All right, Japanese were forbidden to leave, so they couldn't bring back foreign ideas, and they wanted to develop as a self-sufficient country. So what was the result? Europeans began to explore west across the Atlantic to the New World. So because they could no longer get easy access to the east, now they're headed west, and that's where we see the exploration of the New World, the Americas, and so forth. All right, answer your question there in your notes. You're going to start a project today. In that project, you and a partner or you by yourself, that's fine, are going to pick an explorer from the list of people on that project list. If you want to pick somebody else and there's enough information from that time period, that's fine. Maybe just shoot me an email to make sure it's okay. And you're going to follow those steps. Do the research first. Today's going to be the day you have the most amount of time to work on it. Next week in class, I'll see you guys 3 days. We'll have some stuff to do first, and then you'll have like the last 30 minutes of each of the days to kind of work on that Explorer project. So you have today, you've got parts of next week, and the following either Monday or Tuesday, we are presenting those. Okay, so just be ready to go. If you've got questions, let me know. Have a wonderful day. If I won't see you, so have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next week, guys. Bye.